Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rick along with Brad Kooima with Kooima Varilek. Mixed in the grains with corn and wheat low or higher, soybeans are lower, and over in the livestock, we saw some two-sided trade action initially, but right now we're mostly lower. And cattle, Brad, let's start off with talking just a little bit about the cattle market, because a little correction yesterday, but what did you attribute that to? We were kind of up into some lofty areas, especially in the feeders with those new contract highs.
For sure. When the market is as high as this one is and overbought, yada, yada, you'll get these down days a little easier. I really thought that the catalyst was probably the corn, which impacted feeder cattle. They got them sharply lower, which then I think spilled over a little bit into the cattle. It seems like every Monday, the market goes through the same litany of, well, what about the cash and at this time of year, and some of the demand bears want to keep chirping. I struggle with really buying it much into that demand story. Yeah, I understand where CAB is. I understand where primes are and all that other stuff. But of course, you got to remember you were comparing to stuff that was off the charts crazy. So to me, when you're going to kill as big as they killed last week, they killed 125,000 yesterday. If things were really that poor, I think the packer would slow it down. And I'm afraid he's going to have to. Looking at the show list this week, Michelle, the show lists are down in the south. And in my backyard up here, honestly, the show list here that we have that I know about is the smallest in my memory. And I'm an old guy. We're pulled ahead. The calves aren't there yet because of the poor winter. And, I think if you ask somebody in the north, they would say, well, why would I take less? Last week, I personally got 180 from 3 different packers. That was $3 higher. And I just don't, I think there's a fair amount of resolve at least by the market participant here in the north with this few of cattle that, if they don't like the bids, we have the ability to say no.
Well, and I know cash was called steady in the south last week, but if you look at the 5-area weighted average, we were still up $1. The north still running premium to the south. And, as we go forward, cash is still going to be king, but you've got futures at such a discount that should continue to pull that board along, don't you think?
Convergence. I would agree with you, that when we stopped the bleeding last week, which, even though those of us in the north were disappointed, I'm sure the guys in the south are disappointed too with 170, right?
Sure.
But it was a change of pattern. When the market's discounted like this, it's telling you that the expectation is that it's going to stair step the cash down to where we have convergence by the last of June. And breaking that pattern of being 2 or 3 lower every week by at least being steady and then the north being higher, I would think would have to make those guys that are confidently bearish, like the front end of the market, like the Junes, checking their whole card just a little bit. My guess is that we have a shot at being steady in the south and maybe firmer in the north. When you're trying to bury a discounted structured market like this, I think it's a little hard on the seller too to really get that pulled off.
So let's also go back and talk a little bit about cattle on feed, neutral overall. But when you look at the state by state breakout, it really tells a little bit different story, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's interesting just because I'm a numbers nerd. That's why, but
Me too.
Yeah, for sure. And I get customers that say to me, so we're 95 over here on the basis. It actually got stronger last week, even with the break. But then I hear stories of my friends in the south that, the basis is much, much worse than here, at times 70, 80, 90 cents worse than what it is in the north. In other words, they're paying that much more for cash corn. This guy said, well, how does that work? And I said, well, I don't think it does. And the stories of the empty pens and things like that are real. And when you see it again on the last cattle on feed report on Friday, numbers in Texas, 96% of a year ago on feed, Nebraska, 95%, Kansas, 98%. And maybe the real stick out number to me, Colorado down 10% at 90%, is interesting. Now, the one state that has as many or more than a year ago, and it's at 102, is Iowa. So, people laugh when I said I think the movement of cattle might actually move back toward the north, back closer toward the feed source. It looks to me like it might be happening a little bit. And of course, freight rates and this seasonal imbalance, or this imbalance regionally of the cash corn is part of that story too. But And one other thing, maybe when we're talking about cattle on feed topics, total cattle on feed right now, a little over 10 million, 163 in 2014, 9,227. We're getting along pretty good, I would say, with quite a few more cattle than we had in 14.
So do you think this atypical BSE case got any attention or traction yesterday or even today?
I think maybe, because I know guys tell me, computer stuff is not my jam at all, but I know that there's algorithms that are written to react to words. I mean, seriously. So this is a non-human element left at all in some of these algorithms. So if there's a particular word, and I would think BSE would certainly be on their short list, right?
Right.
That the market automatically sends sell signals, that this computer algorithm automatically sends sell signals to the thing. Now, you and I can sit back here and go like, hey, no, it's atypical. It didn't get to the food chain. The system's working, yada, yada. But I'm not sure that it didn't. That was part of the reason why we started out so poorly yesterday.
Yeah. And then the debt ceiling talks. Don't you think the funds are kind of watching that just a little bit too, unfortunately?
Well, they have to be, and as you and I have talked about 100 times, uncertainty is bearish. It just is on cattle. That's just the way it is. And when you put that market uncertainty on a macro deal like that, certainly I think that is impactful too. It just eliminates the desire for the long speculator to stick his neck out.
And feeders have been the leaders. We've seen a little correction now again off the contract highs, but the cash market is really driving that thing pretty strong, isn't it?
Oh man, then it looks like the index is going to be up a couple dollars here based on auction markets here yesterday. Around, I've heard anywhere 7, 8, 9 higher. It's some of the different ones that the reportable weight will go into. Anybody that's been active in the feeder cattle market knows just how difficult it's been to procure cattle.
True.
Across the north, where the moisture situation is much better than some areas of the south, of course, the demand for any kind of grass type cattle, and I've seen cattle all the way up weighing into the 800-pound range that guys are buying back to go back to grass. It'll be fun to see what happens with the heifer numbers here now as we move forward, whether they've got enough moisture and enough guts to save some heifers here, so we don't have to feed every single one of them like we did last year.
Yeah. Really, new contract lows again in the hogs, Brad. It's just brutal.
It's brutal. I don't even know how to describe it.
I don't either. I don't know that I want to spend much time talking about it either.
I'm a big cash negotiated guy. I'm a guy that thinks that price transparency is important. The hog market has neither one. And I think that's part of the problem.
Okay.
We had a big premium. We took that all out. We make new lows like a hot knife through butter here. It's amazing. Funds are a monster short. We got to figure out a way to rally far enough to get these funds to come out of some of their shorts. And the funds are they're the boss.
Do you think people keep trying to tell me this Prop 12 thing is still psychologically negative here for the fund community? Do you think that's part of it?
I see some of that in the spreads, Michelle, where June gained on August, where that would tell me that they feel that that's real.
Right.
Because why wouldn't you hoard pork in June if you had to figure out a different way to procure it in July, right? What I find a little odd is that, of course, we're talking about a computer. They don't understand it, but there's no question that productivity will drop. So when you farrow hogs in a non-confined space like that, they're going to lose feeder. They're going to lose baby pigs. I know that's the way my dad did it when I was a little kid. That's the way we had to do it.
That's long-term bullish.
Absolutely. Now, I'm doing a little digging last week one day with some kind of was interesting. I had one guy that I have a lot of respect for said that they thought that somewhere near 10% would maybe ready to be compliant, that there was that many people that were farrowing hogs based on the requirements that's stated by Prop 12. So if that's the case, when California imports 15%, if there's 10% compliant, maybe this isn't such a huge bump on the road. Maybe it's just a little rumble strip here that we can get around.
I was thinking the same. All right, corn market putting in weather premium, you think? And soybeans, why are we going the opposite direction? Just because meal's down and we're taking some profits here technically, or what?
I kind of like all of that. What you said, I guess I'd preface it with, I'd say this, we come in yesterday with the first less than perfect forecast that we've had here for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. You've got a chunk of the Western Corn Belt that's living day to day, with the lack of subsoil moisture. So, I think that reminded the market that timely rain is going to be critical. the market may be dampened a little bit by crop conditions yesterday, which pretty hard to find much bearish there between what's
True.
planted and what's emerged and stuff like that. I do think that there's a story though on that meal thing. And whether that's triggering from some of this Prop 12, some of this sow liquidation talk that you've heard, just less feed usage. And of course, if I could read China's mind, what they're thinking about doing from their import standpoint on that market, the meal is definitely the weak link of that soy complex. I'm not particularly friendly. I know that's a bummer for all you grain producers out there. If it doesn't rain, yeah, it's going to go a lot higher. If somebody can tell me for sure that they know what the weather's going to do, we don't need any other details here. But I would still be dialed in as a producer to the market's telling you that we've slowed demand. We've got lots of acres planted. If it does rain, and I don't know if it's going to or not, I think I'm in kind of the Sal rallies mode here, especially on the beans, but to a certain degree on the corn as well.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for joining us, Brad Kooima with Kooima Varilek. That's Markets Now.